So I used to make video games, and then experimental hardware games, and now playful hardware installations. And I'm going to show you some of those things. First about me, yeah, so I did computer science, experimental games, and now playful hardware. And here's one of my early games. I also brought this one along. It's called Line Wobbler. Dimensional video game. It runs on only one line of lights. So it's a very minimalist thing, but and I started it as a little hobby project over the weekend, but it was so well received that I have shown it at over 100 exhibitions, museums, festivals, won a couple awards, and I'm still working on that. So it's a dungeon crawler. It's just very much a game without any scientific background, but if you feel bored later, you can play it downstairs. I brought it along. It's a fun little experiment, and it's also quite fun because it is very limited. So, and that's kind of what I like to experiment with when I make these things, is like limit myself in the design, and that informs the mechanics that I'm going to use. Like for this, in this case, for games, but it's also for other kinds of installations that I built. So like here, if it's one-dimensional, you don't have any text, any textures. You barely have color to convey any information. So it's very minimalist, and it's quite fun to think around this as a challenge for creativity, for game design, for coming up with cool new ideas. And also, we don't have too much time to go through this, but I'm a software engineer, so doing anything with hardware, anything with kids or drunk people will definitely lead to a lot of tears, mostly on my side, because everything breaks all the time. You have software bugs, but then on top of that, you have hardware bugs as well, which, you know, come only out when, you know, you have 100 kids that are going to be disappointed if that thing breaks. So I went through like 6 or 7 iterations, especially of these little springs that I use, and I now contacted a spring factory to make myself custom springs. So I know more about springs than I ever wanted, but it is quite a fun challenge. This is another game I made. This is about the perception of pain. It's a knife on a motor, and you're supposed to hold your fingers in the path of it as long as you can. I haven't shown this in the US. Litigation culture here is a bit too scary for me, but I did show it in the UK. I think it slid under the radar of most health and safety inspectors. It's quite fun. I didn't bring this along, unfortunately. Would be fun. Nobody was hurt making this installation. But today, yeah, so this is my most recent thing called Quantum Jungle. It started as a small experiment on my side using doorstop springs as an input medium. And I thought they're kind of cool. They're very tactile. How can I make this into a sensor, some kind of joystick? And I started making larger and larger versions of this. And at one point, I partnered up with a university that wanted to have a quantum, it's a quantum computing department that wanted to have like public outreach art installation. And that was what got me into making it bigger. And it's quite a fun kind of collaboration, and also my first foray into science art. So it's kind of was new to me, but I was interested in quantum physics anyway. So it was a cool way to collaborate. And here I've got a couple of photos of the making of process, because it's also the biggest thing I've built. Just like working with CNC machines and doing all these physical hardware things. It's quite a fun learning experience as well. Here's me in London in the makerspace, working on these things, drilling 1,000 springs into wood. It's a bit boring, but, you know, meditative, quite fun. Yes, so then I got bigger and bigger, banana for scale. It is now recently become 1,000 springs. Here's me and some friends setting it up in Pisa recently at a cool old building that's together with the Pisa University. And yeah, we don't have time to talk about the software. It's all written from scratch, but software side was the easiest part of this. The scientists provided the algorithm that I used, and this is, in this case, Schrödinger's equation for quantum particle movement. And on the device itself, you kind of touch these springs, and then there's like expanding clouds of probability distribution. But my side was mostly making it pretty and fun for kids, so they can interact with it even if they don't understand the quantum parts of it. But yeah, I need to, don't really have time to go through the way how this works, but it is, I can explain this later. I haven't brought this one. I brought a smaller spherical model of this. But in general, I'm interested in doing this more often now. So I want to do more playful art, more playful science art. And so I'm looking for collaborators. But also, since I'm new to this, if any of you have ideas of, where to apply this, where to exhibit this, perhaps how to get funding, I'm all ears, and I'm happy to talk to you about this. If you want to find more, Instagram is probably the best way to do this, robin.wobbles. And that's all for me. Thank you.